Is anybody going to say anything?
Welcome to Crew Expendable. I am Alien Species Hallstrom. I got nothing.
I was going to say, it sounded like you didn't really, like you got put on the spot and then suddenly you were like, oh shit, I forgot to think one up.
Unnamed Alien Species Hallstrom. There we go.
And I am Headburster Rohrbacher.
Oh, fuck. And we are a couple of Xenodorks reading an alien comic. Reading in quotes, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did read it.
There wasn't much to read, I guess, is the thing.
Well, to be fair, it is mostly action scenes, so it goes by quick.
Yeah. Not a single line of dialogue in the whole thing.
I was purposely not going to mention that on the episode to see how many people actually read it, but sure, let's just spoil it for everyone.
How else are we going to talk about this thing?
I don't know.
We got to spoil it.
I figured we'd just figure it out. I don't know. I didn't really think that far ahead.
Yeah, we didn't plan this.
But yeah, as we mentioned in the previous episode, today we're covering the Alien Annual Number 1 parenthetical 2023.
Yeah, we are. But that's not all. First, before we jump into this bad boy, some people may have missed it. Some people who subscribe to the podcast feed who don't follow us on YouTube or the social medias, right? We finally did our Dead by Daylight Alien chapter stream.
We sure did.
Yeah, and that is up on our YouTube page, youtube.com/@crewexpendable. We teamed up with our friends Queen Cream and Brandisandre, two much more experienced Dead by Daylight players than we are.
For sure.
To check out the content. So I played, the stream is my video feed, right? And I played as Ripley. I swapped her outfits a couple of times. We explored the Nostromo wreckage map. Queen played the alien queen at one point, right? Which was very fun to see. That's part of the DLC that I didn't get. I just got the base Xeno, so I'm going to have to get in there and figure out how to get that.
Yeah, I haven't gotten like any of the costumes yet or anything.
I did play a round or two as the Xenomorph as well, and boy, do I stink at that game.
Yeah, I'm really bad at it too. I hear you.
Yeah, it's fun though. I think it's a fun game to play when you're playing with friends like we were,
For sure.
as opposed to like when the pressure's on and you're, oh, I hope I'm not a bad killer for these survivors online that I don't know, or, oh, I hope I'm, because like the times we did play with like a killer, who wasn't in our group, I got hooked so fast every single time.
Yeah, we got completely rinsed every single time we were playing against someone that like wasn't with us.
Right.
They just completely demolished us every time.
Just got bodied over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my dumbass one time forgot to hit the spectator button. So then you guys had like a good match where you actually survived till the end. I was dead and didn't capture the action. So
whereas we played something like, I don't know, 4 or 5 rounds, something like that. And every single time I got dead last in the score results during the end of match tally. So yeah, but doing well.
I don't know. There were definitely rounds where I just died right away. So I can't imagine you did worse than that. We should maybe talk about the actual content of the thing, though. I know it's been out for a while and people who want to see it have seen it, but some people may not have, right? Well, first, I guess we should describe the game briefly. It's an asymmetric multiplayer game where you have 4 survivors like in a map trying to power up generators and reach an exit before the killer, I think they're just called killers, right?
Yeah.
Puts them on hooks and sacrifices them to the darkness or the fog or whatever.
Yeah, whatever the thing is.
The entity, is that it?
Probably.
Something like that. So the alien content is a map that is the Nostromo crashed on LV-426, and the Narcissus also crashed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And up in the sky, you can see the bone ship, the Juggernaut,
Sure can.
the derelict, right?
You sure can.
Which we have to call the bone ship because of the Alien trilogy.
I remember. Don't worry.
Yeah. And the Xenomorph is available as a killer. So that's the content here. And there's different costumes. Ripley's got her Nostromo flight suit. She's got her aliens look, like the white T-shirt and the suspenders and the Converse, right? No, they're not Converse. I always call them Converse, but the sneakers, you know,
they're high tops. Yeah,
the high tops. And then again, there's something a premium skin that makes Ripley look like Ripley 8 from Alien Resurrection, and the Queen alien version of the Xenomorph, which was really fun to watch that Queen running around on that map. I don't even know how to describe it. I was like, man, I don't know. That was just fun. Anyway, we just checked it all out, took a stroll through the map. I thought that the map was very, very cool.
It's real big.
It's a huge map. It seemed larger than the other maps we've played, right? But I'm not sure that it actually is.
Yeah, it felt that way to me too. Like you said, I don't know if it actually is, but it certainly seemed like it was.
Yeah, I think maybe just the fact that the ship is elevated, because the other maps have like basement sections and they have like some like buildings you can go upstairs in and things like that. But yeah, I don't know, maybe just the way that the Nostromo was made, it just seemed like the map had a lot more scale and a lot more like verticality to it even. Sorry, I'm opening a Sunkissed Zero Sugar.
No, nice.
But the map is cool, like, and there's all these nice touches, right? Like, there's one part where you walk by like the med lab inside the Nostromo, and I guess the first person who walks past it, a face hugger, like jumps up at the window.
And the listeners, that first person that walked by it during that playthrough, during that round, that was me, baby.
Yeah, it was. The dining room table, I'll call it. Has Ash's dead body all over it. Apparently we didn't do this. Apparently there's like you can find like maybe Ash's head somewhere in the map and then use it to access another door, like a hiding place or something. There seems to be like quite a bit of Easter eggs. I don't think we even got to explore all of it, you know, but
we did not. No.
But it was very fun nonetheless, and a very cool looking map. And I loved looking up and just seeing that bone ship hanging over the cliff, you know. I also really liked that, I don't know, this is just me, like, if they're going to do an alien map, right, the most direct way to do that would be like, I don't know, well, the map will be the bone ship, right?
Yeah.
Because it's already crashed on a planet. I like that they're like, no, we're going to rewrite the mythology here. We're going to have the Nostromo be crashed, Ripley being the only survivor. You know, we're not going to do another make you walk through the bone ship thing that every other alien video game has made you do since they went 3D, right?
Instead, we get to walk through the Nostromo, which is also a ship we've walked through a billion times.
We haven't walked through it that many times. How many other times have we? I know.
Well, what I was going to say was that if you recall, during our discussion on isolation, we determined that the whole reason the ship on that or in that game, I know we haven't talked about the game, but just go with me here. The whole reason the ship in the game looks like that is because it gives us a chance to just walk around the Nostromo, because it basically is the Nostromo.
The what is that? What is it called?
I don't remember.
Yeah, but yeah, it was fun in isolation to walk through basically the Nostromo, right? But this time we got to actually walk through like, no, this is the Nostromo. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. It's not, because the Nostromo didn't crash, but I know what you mean.
No, the Taurans we got there.
The Taurans, all right.
No, this is like alternate universe Nostromo. So
yeah,
it totally counts.
Yeah, you can especially tell because Ripley's running around on the surface of 426 without a suit on. So, yeah. Yeah,
in this universe, breathable atmosphere that was successfully terraformed by the engineers. Maybe that derelict isn't even crashed. Maybe it's just parked up there. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe they're watching us while we play the game.
They probably are.
Oh, shit.
Also, in this universe, Ellen Ripley does not look like Sigourney Weaver.
Also correct, yes.
Yeah, but like, here's the thing: like, they did not use Sigourney Weaver's likeness, right? She didn't sign on. That's the thing that happened in this game. We talk about it on the stream that like Laurie Strode is available in the game. It is not Jamie Lee Curtis, you know. But like you look at this version of Ripley and you think, yeah, that's Ripley. I buy that as Ripley. Absolutely.
I remember you also saying on the stream, because listeners, after a little while, we decided to mix it up and try different stuff. You loaded up Ash and you took one look at him and you were like, that kind of looks like Ash, I guess.
Yeah, I did play as Ash Williams at the end there. And yeah. I think there's just a style to the game, right? That isn't maybe striving for like photorealism. Apparently Bruce Campbell like gave his likeness to the game. And yeah, I don't know. It looks fine. I got nothing. It's like, what am I going to do? Who am I going to make fun of in this? Nobody. Like, who am I about to insult and why? Why am I doing this?
Yeah, why? Exactly why?
Hey crew, future Neil here to say I cannot believe during recording we didn't bring up the flamethrower sentry guns that are also a part of the Dead by Daylight Alien DLC. As a survivor, you can find flamethrower sentry guns and set those up instead of traps to, fuck with the Xenomorph. And if you know me and you've heard me talk about Fireteam Elite and Dark Descent, you know I love a sentry gun. So I'm glad to see him here. Now back to the past, present, whatever. Anyway, we had fun playing Dead by Daylight, checking out the alien stuff. Go watch the video on our YouTube page and follow our friends. Follow Queen Cream on Twitch and Brandis Andre. I'm going to put links to their Twitch stuff down in the description. Anyone out there who's listened to MK Podquest, my other show, may have heard Brandon on a couple episodes of that.
For sure.
Yeah, listen to those too. Listen to that show. I hear it's pretty good.
That's right.
But as you already said, Kenny, we're here today to talk about the Alien Annual #1 parentheses 2023 from 20th Century Studios and Marvel Comics. Sorry, in association with Marvel.
Or as I just internally call it, Alien Annual #2, even though it's technically numbered #1, whatever.
Yeah, I'm going to call it Alien Thaw #0.
Okay, way to spoil it. Good work.
And folks, we just, usually when we do these new comics, right, we do like a read along sort of podcast episode, right?
Yeah, we can't really do that with this one because, as I mentioned earlier, there's no dialogue in this comic.
There's no dialogue in this comic. The solicitation, I think, called this an alien versus alien story. Mm-hmm. It is an alien versus alien story. There's not a single human being in this comic at all.
Yep.
I guess with the exception of like some text at the very end, like the last page, right?
Yeah, there's like one of the panels in like one of the last page or two very briefly has a very tiny and far away human in it, but that doesn't count. It doesn't matter.
And then there is a Wayland Yutani file at the end that has some quotes from some humans. But yeah, this is not a read along experience, but we're just going to kind of talk about this thing broad strokes as opposed to going panel by panel because nobody wants that. Let's just get right into this. The comic does start very specifically in the year 2156.
Sure does.
Yeah, which is what is that?
I looked it up.
30.
It's 23 years before the events of Aliens and Aliens 3.
Okay.
And it's also 3 years before the events of Out of the Shadows.
Oh, interesting.
Well, Out of the Shadows doesn't have any bearing on this story. I was just trying to like put it in the proper framing of what was happening in the Alien universe at the time.
That's fair. I read something recently that may have just been like a Wikipedia entry, not updated. That was like Out of the Shadows. The Shadow trilogy is canon to the film franchise, and I'm thinking like there's no way, but okay,
well
cool.
I mean, that's the thing, it was intended to be right. Like when they made it, that was their plan. So I mean, there's no real reason why it couldn't be. I mean, you'd have to kind of fudge some stuff, but there's a lot of stuff in the Alien franchise that works like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's tier one canon, right? But anyway, yeah, we're not here to talk about that. So we are after the events of Alien, because that was I never remember 2122 according to this title page,
yeah,
right?
2122. So yeah.
So we're in the year 2156, and I don't know, man, this opening page of this Xenomorph sitting on the top of like a a drifting spaceship is really fun. I don't know why. Like, I don't understand why, like, why would he be doing this?
He's just chilling.
He's just like the emo Xeno, right? He's just like sitting on the roof, like, gazing up at space. Like,
okay, listeners, there is a ruined spaceship drifting through space, and it has like a whole bunch of holes blown in it, and entire chunks of wall are taken out. So missing, it's like, completely ruined all through. It's not like there's people on board or anything. Xenos have taken this thing over.
Yeah.
And the opening panels of the comic are a close-up of a Xenomorph just sitting there. And then over the course of the panels, the camera like pans out a little, and the Xeno is like sitting chilling on like the outside of the ruined spaceship.
Yeah.
Just like gazing out, wordlessly into space.
Yeah, it's a nice drawing. It's just a funny image. I mean, I like it. It's just a funny image because I just imagine he's like sitting up there thinking about a girl he likes,
And then something spooks him, I guess, or whatever, because for reasons of entirely his own, he turns around and runs back into the ship and into a room nearer to the center of the ship where there is a big old queen in there.
Yes, a whole bunch of other Xenos, a queen, a bunch of eggs, right? A bunch of ovomorphs, some of which are open. So I guess, this was at one point populated, I suppose.
And then the queen gets really agitated when suddenly the ship starts descending into the atmosphere of the planet and burning up.
I've been all over this image of the ship, like entering. There's no name on this thing, right? There's no name on this ship.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we ever get one.
We do not know. It's just a ruined spaceship. Yeah.
So we do get the title page now, and I want to make sure we give the credits for everything. This story is called Alien Regicide, which is also the name of a mission in the last campaign of the base version of Fireteam Elite.
Also correct.
Yeah. It was written by Declan Shalvey, art by Danny Earls, colors by Ruth Redmond, letters by VC's Clayton Cowles, and a cover by Declan Shalvey. That cover is a queen alien, like in fire or something. It looks pretty rad, but it is kind of just a queen alien, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, she's in like a cool, like running forward action pose, but there isn't really anything like going on. Like we don't see what it is she's running to or away from, and she's just like climbing over some rocks. Like it's a cool action scene, but it's just kind of a generic action shot of a queen.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of covers in the Marvel run with a queen on them.
Well, I was going to say I think one has showed up in every arc, but that is not in fact true. But there has been, two different arcs? Well, I guess it depends on whether you consider the Alpha a queen or not.
Yeah, I don't know. We never really got that explanation.
Yeah.
Alpha feels queen-like to me because if that's all they had as a specimen, they were still able to breed others, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't get a definitive answer on that. So anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I've just been mentally calling it the Alpha, regardless of whether it's technically a queen or not. But whatever. Right. That's not why we're here.
Wait till we get introduced to the Sigma, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So, you were doing like the credits and stuff. So.
Yeah, there's always a little box on these credit pages, right? That has some kind of like, there's like whatever information you need to know going into the story. This one talks about the Nostromo, Hadley's Hope. Then in 2195, Weyland-Yutani purchased Talbot Engineering, Batiazan, the Boreas. It goes through the alien Thaw, an abbreviation of the Thaw story. You know what I'm saying? A summary. There's the word.
And just for the record, Thaw actually takes place after this comic does. It takes place roughly 40 years later.
Yes. And then there's also like a box with some kind of like, sometimes it's a computer readout, sometimes it's like a file. Like there's one that was like a Weyland-Yutani file on like how the face hugger works, just like a little info box, I'll call it.
And it's a different thing for every, I don't know if it's a different thing for every issue or if it only changes per arc.
It changes every issue. I flipped back through Thaw just to see if we had missed anything important in these. We didn't. This is a Weyland-Yutani report on host variation concerning the Xenomorph Fiorina 161. This is our first, I think, acknowledgement of the events of Alien 3 in the Marvel run so far.
And it specifically makes the theatrical cut of Alien 3 be the version of it that's canon.
Yes.
Because they say, according to the single surviving eyewitness, the alien came out of a dog as the host.
Yes.
And so since they specifically say it's a dog, that means it's the theatrical cut that is the canon version for the comics.
Yeah, not only that, but they say the actions of the resulting Xenomorph certainly appeared more canine. So they're like, no, it's a dog, right? But it's interesting because this is a file on variations, right? Which is a thing that these Marvel books generally have been obsessed with. Like they've been really exploring the concept of variants, right? We had the tuber variants in Revival, right? We had the weird fish scale variants in Thaw. We had the human hybrid in Icarus, and of course the Alpha, right? The goat variant, we'll call it. And
this comic is no different because this comic has at least 2 different variations of Xenomorph. One of them we've seen before, the other one we haven't. Yeah. So the reason why they're talking about Xenomorph variants is because just like in all of the other runs of Marvel, that is an important idea to this comic as well.
And I don't want to just put that on Marvel either, because it's I think it's been a part of Alien storytelling like for a while now. I know that I've referenced it before, even though I haven't read it yet. I started it. Inferno's Fall brings back some of those like pathogen versions, like the bloodbursters and things, from what I understand. And then variations are all over the Infiltrator novel and Fireteam Elite, right? The Monica variant, right? And then the these spitters and all those things. So like that's very much something that Alien storytelling right now seems to be focused on, which I'm cool with, honestly. I've talked about it before. I love seeing a weird variant of a weird Xenomorph, right?
They also, in this little little info box where they're talking about the events of Fury, they also make a note of describing the events that happened on Fury 161 as, quote, the 4th recorded interaction between humanity and the Xenomorph. And so if Alien 3 is the 4th time that we know of, what were the first 3? Would it be Alien, the Hadley's Hope part of Aliens, and the Marines in Hadley's Hope part of Aliens? Would those be the other 3?
No, man, you're forgetting Project Alpha.
Oh, yeah. Well,
that's got to be what they're doing here. I'm willing to bet, because they were referencing Project Alpha so hard in Thaw, that they're like, okay, it's oh wait, no, because that took place after, didn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna say Project Alpha took place after this comic did.
You know, Kenny, we're idiots.
Mm-hmm.
This book opens with a ship that has been taken over by xenomorphs in the year 2156.
Sure does.
That's the first. That's number 1, Nostromo number 2, Hadley's Hope number 3, Fiorina number 4. Right?
Yeah. It was staring at us in the fucking face the entire time, wasn't it?
It really was. We should be embarrassed.
Yeah. Whoops.
We got there. We overthought it, but then we underthought it, and we got there. I don't know how to tell the rest of the story, man. Like,
I'll handle it then. I got a handle on this. Basically, that ship that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Like I said, it burns up in the atmosphere and crash lands on a planet that very interestingly is covered in ice. Man, where have I heard of an ice planet before? There's something so familiar about that. Imagine I'm tapping the side of my head at my temple right now.
You know, I feel like I heard somebody suggesting that maybe this annual was going to tell the story of an ice planet.
Yeah, I mean, somebody somewhere, possibly even earlier on in this episode, hinted at that.
But I feel like,
I don't know.
So there's this podcast called Crew Expendable. I don't know if you've heard of it.
And
they talk about alien stuff, right?
They sure do.
And one of the assholes on there, I'm not sure which one, but one of the two was like, I bet the annual is going to tie into Thaw. is gonna tell the story about how all the xenomorphs got trapped in ice on.
Yeah, it was probably one of those jerks. Yeah,
on LV-695 or whatever. Right. So, hey, anyway, I'm not saying that that's what's happening in this story, but I'm just.
Yeah, I'm struggling to wonder. I'm struggling to like figure out why you even brought that up. What does that have to do with this comic at all? The ship crash lands on an ice planet, and it is immediately surrounded by a whole bunch of lowercase a aliens. Yeah. And these aliens are aliens that we have not seen before. They're like, as we find out later on, they're like really big, like queen sized.
They're large boys.
And they have like big spider legs.
They have like fat bodies, right? Like they're tick-like almost.
Yeah.
But they're huge.
Yeah. They have like really big, like pointy spider legs, but they have like big fat round bodies, and like their heads stick out, and they have like, they have like a snout muzzle style, like a horse or a dog or that kind of head build. But they also have like, it's not quite a tail, but like a part of their body that grows off the back where a tail would be that is shaped like a xenomorph's head, which I thought would come into play, but it doesn't. That doesn't have anything to do with it. It's just how they happen to be designed. Yeah.
They're cool looking. I like them. Yeah. Of all of the few times we've seen lowercase a aliens, the other ones I can think of are like Outbreak. Yeah, Outbreak.
Yeah, Outbreak.
Yeah, and then the stuff on Prometheus, Fire and Stone. Like these are like my favorite. These are cool looking. Like these guys
are certainly more alien-y than the rest of the aliens we've seen.
They don't feel generic, and they don't feel derivative of like the ones in Outbreak kind of felt like, oh, these are just kind of dragon-like things, right?
Yeah, they're just kind of like animals, but these guys are like aliens.
They feel unique. They feel like a species you'd run into on a planet in Starfield.
Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, a whole bunch of them gather around the crash site, and a whole wave of face huggers comes out of the crash ship. Yeah, it does. And there's a very funny panel that I liked a lot of like one of these spider alien guys just standing there as like 2 or 3 face huggers leap through the air and land on the top of the thing's head and try to scrabble around, and they just kind of bounce away and fall off. Yeah, and then it brings up one of its spider legs and runs one of the face huggers through with it.
Yeah, it just like swipes them off. Because again, these things are huge. These things are like rhinoceros size. I don't know, hippopotamus size.
They're real
larger,
big.
Small elephant maybe.
Yeah, they're real big. And so like the face huggers are just like too small to be able to latch onto these guys. So like I said, it runs one of them through with one of its spider leg points, but like when it does, it bleeds all over the spider alien's face and like burns and bubbles away part of like his exoskeleton or whatever it is.
Yeah, man, that's pretty gnarly.
And so he has like a big burn down the front of his face.
And I don't know how to make this noise, but the noise that these guys make is WHRRR. That's all they make. It's like it's like a whir sound, right? Mm-hmm. But not like a motor, right? Not like a wheel, like an alien tick would make.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have no interest on attempting to make the sound live on air, so don't ask. I was not going to do that. Thank you.
It probably sounds like that.
It probably does. Yeah. One of these big spider alien guys is running around, and he has like a whole bunch of face huggers. Like they're not even trying to latch onto his face. They're just like crawling around on him. There's like a half dozen of them on him or something.
We got some drones have entered the picture at this point, right? Like there's some big boys.
And this one that has all the face huggers on him is running around, and then he skids down like an embankment and falls into a lake. And like I couldn't tell whether he jumped into the lake or fell in it by accident, but he ends up in the lake, and we see his body like drift down into the water. And while that happens, this is when all the drones show up, and then these spider alien guys and the xenomorphs start fighting, and like an actual full-on like army brawl finally starts to happen between the two factions.
I was a little ahead of you because I think it's the guy whose face got burned with acid, then slid into the water, Yeah, the drones are here, and now there's just a knockdown drag out, right?
And then there's a real big one, like one of the spider alien guys. There's a really big one that stomps on in, and he basically tries to like rhinoceros charge and like bowl over a bunch of xenomorphs.
Yeah.
And he does, and he squashes all of them, but all that acid blood that gets churned up gets all over him, and he like melts and dies and like gets killed by all the xenomorph blood.
Yeah, I'm going to be real. I like the art in this. It is a little hard to follow the narrative of what's happening here.
I had to read each page a couple of times before I finally started to piece together what was going on. It's very hard to tell what individual alien is which. Yeah. Right.
There's this amazing scene that comes up next, though. There's just like a pod of these guys, right? And one of the guys is like kind of on his back, not feeling well. Right.
We'll be getting there momentarily.
I think we're there. I think we're there now because we just bowled over all the dudes, right? And the acid.
Well, the one thing that happens between them is that, like I said, this one really big one dies, and then all the rest of the spider aliens flee, and the xenomorphs do not go after them. They just let them run away.
That is a good point. You're right.
And then, after all these spider guys run away, they like end up in some tundra area. And one of them is kind of walking around and he starts to like cough and hack. And then he coughs up a bunch of like corpses of face huggers that just like splatter out on the ground.
He coughs up 2 face huggers. And when I saw this, I was like, of course. Right. Because if a face hugger can't latch onto a face, right? If the face is too large, I think we've talked about this. Like what happens if they're too big, right? Like,
or too small.
Too small. We still don't have an answer for what happens if the species is too small, although it didn't stop the tubers in Revival, right?
Yeah, those guys just crawl inside of you.
Yeah.
Which I suppose, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Because like I said, he coughs up these 2 dead face huggers.
Yeah, they just went into his mouth and dropped their loads right in his throat.
See, it's funny. The way I had interpreted that was that like there were some face huggers crawling towards him, and he killed them by just eating them.
He might have done that too, but.
And then, like I said, he coughs up the face huggers, and he continues to walk, takes a couple of more steps, and then starts coughing again. And then he's all like, ugh, and then he rolls over and he's like lying on his back. And you can like see his chest start to like bulge out. What's great is that there's also a spot on the top of his head that also starts to bulge out. And then there's a really cool panel where this spider alien guy dies when a chest burster comes out of his chest and his head simultaneously.
Yeah, dude, it is gnarly. I might try to make that no, that's such a good, you guys got to buy the comic book to see that.
Yeah, I really think that the episode art for this should just be like a regular normal picture of one of these alien guys. So like the listeners can have like a good idea of what these things actually look like.
I'm going to try for that.
Because like the description that we gave is not wrong, but I'm sure that whatever the listeners is picturing in their head is not actually what these things look like,
Yeah, it may not be exactly correct, but pretty close. But now the drones are here.
Yep. Just right after this one guy dies, the Xenos catch up to them. Another fight starts. And while this fight starts happening, a big crack appears in a nearby ice shelf.
Yeah.
And then after we see that crack.
I want to say, sorry, before we move on, this fight, these drones show up to fight these ticks. Right. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of drones and there's only a handful of ticks. There's only like 5 or 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's maybe only 4 of them left of this little group here since the one died. And there's like 10 xenomorphs. We are seeing xenomorph heads getting chopped off left and right.
We sure are.
The xenomorphs are losing this skirmish.
Yeah, these things rule.
Yeah. I mean,
they're great.
Obviously, Xenomorph's got a bunch of tricks up their sleeve that help them out, right? But like currently, they are losing this battle. Anyway, I just want to like make sure it's known that these ticks can hold their own. Like they can fight.
Yeah,
you know?
they're great.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, a big crack starts forming in a nearby ice shelf, and then we cut back to the ruined ship and the queen and like her xenomorph guards nearby, and okay, here's what happens. Here is they get attacked by some more xenomorphs, and what I had originally written in my notes is picture if you have if you're playing an RPG and you had a xenomorph party member on your team and you equip ice armor onto them.
Right.
So they're like a xenomorph, but they look kind of like icy and spiky.
Sure.
That's what I originally wrote in my notes. And then upon studying it some more, I realized, oh, these aren't ice xenomorphs. These are those fish xenomorphs from Thaw. That's what these guys are.
That's what we were calling them. Yeah. But these are,
and so,
these
yeah,
are,
they're not quite the fish ones from Thaw.
Because these are the ones from the tick guys.
And there's a whole horde of them that run into where the queen
1, 2,
is,
3, 4.
and they start getting into a fight with the queen and all of the regular drones, and they're killing each other.
So some amount of time must have passed, right? There must have been a certain more of these,
presumably
more of these ticks got infected than we saw, and now that hive has hatched. And what is hilarious to me is that hive is now fighting the crashed ship xenomorphs. Right.
Well, we did see in Thaw that the fishy one didn't like or get along with the regular one, so that does make sense.
It's just a weird thing about the hybrids. I guess we saw that too. The literal hybrids we saw in the Gibson Alien 3 also didn't get along with the proper xenomorph. So I guess that's just how it works, right?
And so on top of everything else, xenomorphs are also eugenicists. Who knew? As if you couldn't hate them enough.
Jesus, the true evil right there. Holy shit.
That's right.
Yeah, I just thought that was a nice touch because you think like they're xenomorphs, they're just going to kind of grow their numbers, but it's just weird that a new hive pops out and is like, no, we're going to fuck up the old hive. I guess I guess maybe that's part of their fight for survival is also just this fight for dominance. You know,
presumably, yeah. I mean, again, since there's no dialogue, we don't really have a way to know for sure. But
they don't seem to be taking it personally. But but now we got these dudes fighting the XX121s.
And then a really big one shows up that I assume is like the queen of this group of them.
Yeah.
And this one looks more like the fishy one from Thaw, like it has like the fish tail on the end of the tail rather than the spike. It has the little spikes along the tail, but this one has like, growths on it and like armor plating and stuff that the one from Thaw didn't. And it also has the second smaller pair of arms that queens have, which is why I assumed it was the queen of this group of them.
That's what the reading I got too. In terms of build, it kind of feels like one, I think they're called the Crushers, the pathogen Crushers in Fireteam. Yeah. It's kind of got that sort of gorilla like build in my opinion. But yeah, this one definitely screams queen to me.
And the fishy queen and the regular queen come to blows, and they're about to start fighting each other, and then right as we're one of them attacks the other one, we don't see precisely what happens because then it cuts away to outside, and there is a gigantic avalanche that sweeps down the side of a mountain and sweeps all of the combatants into a gigantic lake, which then freezes and everything gets covered by snow.
Yeah, man, this huge clash between this gigantic, these two queens about to fucking tear each other apart. and
And
then
then
avalanche.
And then we have an extremely fun montage that happens. Because by the way, listeners, we're at the end of the book. We're on we got like 1 or 2 pages left.
Yeah.
And there is an extremely fun montage of like the planet through the years. Like it cuts to, 2191 or whatever year it was.
2189 we see.
I didn't write down the years, but it cuts to this planet in various different years as things progress on it.
And what do we see in the year 2189? We see a Talbot engineering facility and a crawler with 3 people getting out.
Presumably it's the keg.
Yeah, it's the fucking keg. And then we see this monster underwater with its eyes closed, like still frozen, right?
Yeah, because the way it works is we see like the years of like, as it cuts through the years, we see each of those panels of stuff is happening on the surface. But in between each one of those panels, there's a shot of a monster's eyes closed, and each time we see that, the panel gets closer and closer and closer to its eye each time.
Yes. So then we go from 2189 to 2195. We see the crash of the Boreas into the water that we saw in Thaw, right?
Yeah, which happens in Thaw, yes.
With Dayton was on board.
He sure was.
We see we're closer on the eyes now. They are still closed. The year 2203. So that's what? A year after something took place in 02, right?
I believe
Icarus?
Revival.
Yeah.
I think because I think Icarus was 2212 or something, 2217, maybe something like that.
2203.
I think it's not long after Revival took place.
Gotcha. 2203. And we just see the wreckage of, we're just going to call it the keg. Right?
Yeah, presumably.
And the eyes were like right up on the eyes now, and they're maybe starting to open. And then we see the year 2208, and I'm not sure what's happening here, except that maybe things are starting to thaw and break apart.
That's what I'm assuming happens because we see a panel of whatever this monster or alien is. It gets real close on its eye, and then the eye opens up.
Yes. And then we get one final page, and we see that this is the Moon LV695 for sure.
Folks, if you don't recall, that is the setting of Thaw, as we already mentioned.
And we see this gigantic, looks more like the standard tick alien, not the queen,
Yeah.
Not the Xenomorph version, in the water, humongous. A bunch of these alternate Xenomorphs, these white Xenomorphs floating around it. In its stomach, a queen embryo, like in a little swirl.
Yep. And that is correct. It's like in a little circle. We can see it shining through its abdomen. And like when Neil says that it's enormous, it's like Godzilla sized.
Yes. And just,
this thing is massive.
It appears to be massive, larger than the ship, even if that is in fact the ship below it. If that's the entire ship or just a part, I don't know. And to be clear, this queen embryo that's curled up in it is just like the one on the Alien 3 poster. It is the
just
same.
Like that, yeah.
It's reversed, but it's just like it, right?
Yep.
It's an image that evokes. Spoilers for Aliens Dark Descent. I haven't beaten the game. And Kenny, you've seen this part by now, so I'm pretty sure. You know what I'm talking about, right? The colonists. Okay. I've not beaten the game, but in one of the missions, there are some survivors, right? God, I've forgotten everything about that fucking game. I really need to get in there and start mixing it up again.
Yeah, same. It has been a long time since I've played it.
There's these cultists in that who have learned how to survive near the Xenomorph. And the way that they have done that is by putting Xenomorph embryos in their chests and in these containment things.
Yeah, they have a little tank installed into their chest where the embryo just floats inside of it. Yeah.
This looks like that.
I think they're called Guardians or something like that.
Something like that. I'm not sure, but this reminded me of that when I first saw it. I was like, oh, look at that. It's a weird image because the queen it looks so designed. You know what I mean? It looks artificial.
But yeah, I would like to, first off, that's the end of the comic. That's effectively how it ends.
There's question mark.
I mean, yeah, there's a little bit more that we can talk about, but that's the end of the comic. but I would like to remind all of the listeners that before we ever read it, Neil said, I bet the annual is going to tie into the events of Thaw and explain how all of those aliens got frozen.
Yeah.
Folks.
Look, I'm not patting myself too hard on the back here. I feel like I'm not the only one who guessed that, right?
Sure.
And I don't think it was an out there guess, considering the first annual was essentially a prequel to the first story arc. So I don't think it was a crazy leap to say that maybe this annual was going to be a prequel to the most recent story arc either, right? Like there's precedent,
but
right?
Here's something wild though. You want to know something else?
I do. Yes.
This comic isn't just a prequel to the events of Thaw. It's also a prequel to the next arc of the Marvel Alien comic.
Have they done a solicitation for that yet?
They have. I got some info about it. It is going to be a 4-issue miniseries. Okay. And it's going to be called Alien Descendant. And it takes place on LV-695.
Wow.
Like the next arc is, from what I can tell, seems to be a direct sequel to Thaw.
So there is artwork. So we do get the announcement next in Alien #1, a new #1.
Yeah.
This is getting very confusing. What are you doing, Marvel?
It'll be the third one.
Yeah, the third #1. Yeah.
The third #1. That is the reason why I exclusively use
story arc,
like the arc's title and then just the internal numbering for that arc.
Right.
That's why I don't bother trying to just say the overall issue number, because Marvel will relaunch a comic every single time a new arc starts. That's just what they do. So
well, I feel like they should just start publishing them as like Alien Thaw, right? And on the cover is what I'm saying. But whatever, they're gonna Marvel gonna Marvel. But yeah, we do get some preview art here. The new arc will be Declan Shalvey and Andrea Broccardo, and the cover, the artwork pushed in here, which I'm sure is going to be the cover for #1, shows 3 xenomorphs that don't look quite like normal xenomorphs swimming up from a ship's wreckage, clearly underwater. We see bubbles and things like that. It looks cool, but
from what I can tell, based on the solicitations, the next arc, which, like I said, is called Descendant.
Yeah.
It is going to be extremely Weyland-Yutani focused. Yeah. There's a lot of talk in the solicitations about what Weyland-Yutani is going to do and how you got to act to like be able to follow their rules correctly and all that. So it's going to be a real like Wei-Yu heavy arc. Cool. It sounds like.
I'm not surprised. There is one final sort of, I'm going to consider this part of the story. I think this does set up the next series. We do get a classified document about the Talbot Industries acquisition. Audio recordings from defunct station The Keg. I'm just going to read these off here. We have an audio recording from Sergeant James Early, missing presumed dead. It is, don't you suppose you could describe what we're looking for exactly? And then Corporal Andy Harrison, missing presumed dead, replies, sure, James, it's just a big slug that should be crawling around the floor somewhere. Oh yeah, and it has teeth that look like it could eat half my fucking face. Medical officer Caesar Cleary, missing presumed dead, says, I saw that butcher's shop down there, hacked up bits of whatever those things are. I don't know who the biggest monsters are, you or them. Then there's an analysis here. Confirmed encounter with Xenomorph XX121. What video and audio files we can access suggest the presence of another organism that came into conflict with both staff and known xenomorph type. Advise immediate investigation. If a hybrid species has been discovered, samples must be obtained. The research possibilities are vast. Action steps, send a team. Signed, Yutani. I presume that's Ms. Yutani, who we saw in Aliens Aftermath, maybe?
One of the solicitations specifically name drops a June or a Yoon, I guess it would be Yutani, like by name, a named Yutani person is actually mentioned in the solicitations. So
honestly, that sounds kind of fun. I'm kind of looking forward to, if this is going to be like a Weyland-Yutani team coming to LV 695 with backup, with corporate, I don't know. Like, I'm looking forward to following them on that story, because we didn't really get that in Thaw. So it's not going to really feel like a retread, You know, in Thaw, we were really following the survivors, right?
Well, issue 1 comes out November 15th.
Oh, damn. That's not too far away. You don't have to wait that long.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we will be jumping on that right away like we do with comics, right?
That's the plan.
Yeah. Well, before we close the door on this one and talk about what we're doing next, what did you think of this annual?
There was one other, I'm glad you said that because there was actually something I wanted to talk about.
Yes.
I thought this annual was pretty cool. I liked it. It was fun. Like we mentioned earlier, it's kind of hard to follow, but it's really cool to like see some aliens that aren't xenomorphs. It's always really cool when that happens because it almost never happens.
Yeah.
And so luckily the story, like, unless there's massive swaths of it that I misunderstood, the story was easy enough to follow that I didn't really have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty cool. It was like, it was more of like an action thing, which, as I've said before, is not quite what I'm looking for, but I'll take it because, it's not like it's bad and that I didn't like it or anything. It's just not my number one thing for the franchise. But like, yeah, it was a nice, tight, fast-paced little action story about some aliens fighting each other. And I just thought it was cool. It was a novel idea to do an entire comic book without any dialogue, which I thought was also cool. Yeah,
that is one of those fun things that you can do in comics. There is G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero number 21 from Marvel Comics, I believe, is a Snake Eyes focused issue that is completely silent. There's not a single line of dialogue in that at all. It was one of those things that like Larry Hama, the writer, got like a lot of accolades for. Mm-hmm. So this idea has been done before, but it's still interesting when it is done. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to drop that in case my brother, the big G.I. Joe fan, listens to this. he knows I remember him telling me about that issue.
But yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I enjoyed reading it, although, like I said, I did have to like go over it a few times until I was confident I understood what it was trying to tell me. So it did take me longer to read than I would have expected it to. But it was a nice little, like, he had a cool idea. It's a fun little gimmick. It's something that I wouldn't want to have happen like every time, but it's cool that he decided to try it out and see how it would turn out, Yeah,
it's fun. It's fun when a book does something like that. Like, yeah, this isn't the same thing, but there's a late issue. This is when Peter Laird still owned Ninja Turtles. Mirage Studios was still publishing the Ninja Turtles comics. This was early mid-2000s, maybe. Mm-hmm. 2009, I want to say, but I'm sure that's wrong. I think Kevin Murphy wrote it. There's an issue of Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where Leonardo is in a fight with someone and has been blinded in this fight. So the whole comic is drawn just with like vague silhouettes as he's trying to like fight this opponent he can't see. And it was very, very cool.
It's kind of cool, yeah.
It's just such an open-ended medium that when people do non-standard things, it's very cool. And I think sitting down to be like, we're going to celebrate this series, we're going to do our annual issue, we're going to have the audacity to charge a whole extra $1 for it, and there's not going to be a single line of dialogue in it. But I think it was a successful and an interesting book, and I can't think of another alien book like this. I can't think of a whole lot of other comic books like this specifically. I think it's fun, and I think it works really well as a prequel and a tie-in to the Thaw series, and certainly it's gonna tie into the next series as well, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a fun little interstitial issue here while we are changing the focus of the story. I think it was teased well. We got those, like it was set up, like this was planned, right? Like I think the fact that we saw those, we called them the fishy xenomorphs in Thaw, that we saw these hybrids in Thaw, or a version very similar to these, right? Like, so we knew that there was something else out there, right? Which made it easy for me to guess about the annual, predict, right? Make an educated guess that the annual was going to deal with whatever that species was. Now to finally see it, it works as a part of the larger story that we've gotten half of already, and we're going to get the other half of pretty soon here. Speaking of the visuals, though, the one thing we didn't touch on, which is the most important thing of the book because it doesn't have any fucking dialogue in it, what did you think of the art? I think the art overall is really, really good. I think that the page layouts are a little dense. A lot happens, like there's a lot of panels on some of them, right? Which which keeps me from really being able to absorb the artwork. Like I would like to see a lot of this. Like even I'm reading a digital version. I can get these panels to like fill up my 24-inch monitor in high definition because it's, you know, it's a purchased version, right? There's still some detail lacking because there had to be so many pages, like panels on some of these pages. I feel like the book could have used more pages, right? I feel like they were trying to like really squeeze a lot into the page allotment that they were given. So we're getting a lot of pages with like 6-8 panels on them and only a couple like large splash pages really showing things off. And those splash pages, those large pages, like the one with the hybrids and the xenomorphs like fighting each other, look very cool. The like full page like hybrid queen looks awesome, but then you get to like where the queen and the hybrid queen are about to face off, and it's just a half page essentially. You just kind of lose some of the. They were doing a lot. There's this is a really hard book to lay out, I think. So I think it looks good. I just wish it had more room to breathe.
Fair. That's fair.
What about you?
I also really like the art in this book. Like, you know, how familiar are you with people that do like digital comic book art? Like as opposed to doing it by hand.
Do I know any of them in person? I don't know.
Well, no, like, are you familiar with what that looks like?
Yeah, more
because
or
like
less.
when somebody does art, like comic art digitally, it looks different. Like it just stylistically by its very nature, it always kind of looks different and you can always kind of tell.
Sure.
This definitely has less of like a digital, like computer art. Like this has more of like a stereotypical comic book art style where everything has like thicker black outlines around it and everything.
Sure.
It's a lot less. I guess you could call it like it's less detail oriented, I guess would be a okay way to put it. Like it's not as busy. The artwork is a lot like comparatively to previous books. So there's less going on and everything's a bit more simplified.
You can see it in like the page where we're seeing the queen in the wreckage, like on the planet, where the panel above the queen is ovomorphs, right? And you can tell that they were drawn they weren't drawn super detailed and then shrunk down. They were sort of drawn absent some of that detail because they were drawn to fit in this panel, right? Yeah. Like in digital comic book art, I mean, they can put as much detail in as they want because then they can just like stretch it down. Yep. You know, so I get what you're saying there.
And so, the art has more of like a stereotypical, like classic comic book style feel to it, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just pointing it out because like the previous books didn't have that art style. And so this is like they're mixing it up a little bit, trying something a little different in comparison to what they've done with this property before. And like, I thought the art looked really good. I liked it a lot. I liked the, like, you know, how everything was a little bit more simplified, which how you were saying how like, you're correct when you said that, like, you know, the panel layout's really dense. There's a lot going on. And so like this comparatively little bit simplified art style works well with that because then since there's a little bit less detail, it prevents everything from just looking like a mesh of like a whole like washed out mess of just like ink lines all over the place. Like, you know,
right. This must have been a challenge. Like, and I just want to be clear. Like, I think that they pulled it off. Right. Who's the artist? Danny Earls.
Yeah, Danny Earls.
I think Danny Earls pulled it off. There's some interesting choices that I think were made for pacing. Right. Like our first page, we've got 4 shots technically. The quote unquote camera. Well, I guess going from nothing to the xenomorph and zooming out from the xenomorph to reveal the derelict ship, right? We've got multiple kind of shots of the queen's mouth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 5 panels of like zooming in and out on the Queen as that ship is entering. So there's a lot of like that stuff kind of repeated over and over again. And then,
or like at the end during the montage where it keeps cutting back to that panel of the thing's closed eye, you know?
Yeah. Cause that's that is the storytelling avenue for this book, is in just in the art and the changes, like panel to panel, right? There's no text backing you up, nothing expressing anything. Not even like a human facial expression to like shortcut an emotion or a feeling to us, right? Like this is just monster on monster.
I'm glad you actually said that, because this entire book, or this entire episode rather, we kept saying, oh, there's no dialogue. There's no dialogue. I'm glad you said that though, because like, it's not just that there's no dialogue. There's no text. Yeah. There isn't even like outside of like, you know, when they tell us the year at the beginning and the year and like where we are at the planet at the very end, there isn't even like text boxes. There isn't even like info boxes or anything. There's like no text in this comic. There's not just no dialogue, but nothing.
No. Yeah. I mean, there's descriptive text, right? Like we get like, by which I mean like the scree of the xenomorph, or the whine of the ticks, or the crack of the ice during the avalanche. Those things, we get those.
Yeah, there's sound effects. Yeah.
Nothing. There's no narrator. There's no one telling us what's going on. It's just purely visually told, and I think it's told well. I think it is I think this is a really fucking hard thing to do, and I think that they did it pretty well. Right.
Mm-hmm. I would not have been able to make it better than this.
Yeah. Good book. I think a good bridge between Thaw. I liked that this came after, even though this is the story of what happened before Thaw. I like seeing the story afterwards. You know, this is not one that you would like. I think we were fine reading the first annual before we talked about Bloodlines. I don't think you have to read Bloodlines first, right?
Yeah, for sure.
In fact, but like this one, I think that you should read Thaw before you read the annual. You know, I think that the publishing order of these is probably the right way to experience these, which usually is the case, you know.
Yeah, especially because the big thing that happens at the end of this comic, it happens after Thaw is already over anyway. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, so this sort of bookends, you know, it's sort of this kind of what you should do. Maybe you read this up to the point you get to the montage 2189, then you read all of Thaw, and then, you know, and then when you get to the part where the Boreas crashes in that, then you look at the panel, the 2195 panel showing the Boreas crash, then you finish Thaw, and then you come back to this and finish out the last 2 pages.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
That's absolutely, yes. Sure. Why not? It definitely is.
Just as the author intended. Kenny, I'm tired. Right. I think we should get out of here.
That's fine.
Good book.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too.
I'm enjoying this direction. I'm excited. I'm both like excited. First of all, thank God the next series is only 4 issues. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but like I really loved the setting, the 695 setting. I loved the Thaw storyline. I liked revisiting it here. I don't know that I want another 5 or 6 issues in this one location. So doing the next series as 4 issues, wrapping up this 695, the LV 695 story, like I'm down for that. I'm excited to see it. Like
the one other thing I saw during the solicitations that I remember that I haven't mentioned yet is that they already announced, even though Descendant hasn't even started yet, they've already announced the release date of the trade for it.
Okay.
And when that trade comes out, it's going to be the 4 issues of Descendant and this annual are going to be packaged together in the trade.
Nice. They'll probably lead off with this, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Right.
Presumably.
Fingers crossed.
I mean, I have to assume that what happens at the end of this issue is a lead in to the events of Descendant. I have to assume they're connected. So I'm guessing this one will be first.
What if it's not? What if they're just like, gotcha? Right.
It's a completely
different planet.
I mean, stuff has done that before. I mean, I don't necessarily know if any. Well, actually, yeah, stuff. We were just talking about it. How at the end of Revival, that guy's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have to test that chick's sickness out some more," and then that just never gets followed up on or brought up again or seen again. So they have done that before.
Yeah, I don't even remember that now. It's totally gone from my head. It's been like 2 weeks.
Yep, because it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of irrelevant, our next episode will be on Alien Resurrection.
We're finally getting to the resurrection era of the timeline, folks.
Kenny, we'll just break the fourth wall a little bit. Third wall? I don't know how many walls there are in podcasting.
It's fine.
We're recording that episode tomorrow with our friend Bob from the Flock podcast. I don't know when it'll be out because I imagine it's going to be an editing nightmare. Probably. As the movie ones tend to be, just because there's a lot to say about Alien Resurrection.
A lot happens in it.
I watched it today, and I didn't enjoy myself at all.
I am going to be watching it tonight.
But I want to be clear. I have spoken in the past about how often I have watched that movie, and there was a time in my life where that was probably like my second most watched Alien movie. And I've definitely seen it a lot more than Alien 3. And I've always kind of considered it like this is a bad movie, but at least it's kind of fun to watch. And I just didn't have a good time with it. I don't know. I'm going to watch it again though, before we record and see what's up. Maybe it's just something I'm going through.
I will be watching it tonight, presumably after we're done here. And it will be the first time in years that I've seen it. So that'll be fun.
I watched that movie just for fun. Like since we started the podcast, I just put it on one day. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to watch Alien Resurrection for fun. And I remember having fun watching it. And then something happened today. And it's just, I don't know. Maybe I ate something bad for lunch.
Maybe you woke up and realized you don't like Ron Perlman anymore. Who knows?
Oh, it's definitely not that. He was the only guy getting me through. Him and Top Dollar from The Crow.
Of course.
What's his name? Michael something.
Michael Massey.
Michael Wincott. I would watch that man do anything.
I wonder who I was thinking of then. Michael Massey. I think he was the guy that pulled the trigger that made Brandon Lee die.
Oh, yeah.
That might have been who I was thinking of. I specifically tried to frame that to be like he's the guy or to not be like he's the guy that shot Brandon Lee, because like it was clearly an accident and he didn't do it on purpose and he already felt bad enough as it was.
Dude,
you know,
you did, yeah. Fun Boy, Michael Massey is Fun Boy from The Crow. He is the one who. Yeah. And again, it is not his fault. We were not placing blame. Christ.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm gonna
you said Michael from The Crow, and I was like, well, there's famously one guy named Michael in The Crow. I wonder if it was him. Nah. But turns out there's multiple guys named Michael in the cast of The Crow. Yeah. So who knew?
Crow episode coming up next on the no, we're doing Alien Resurrection next.
Yeah, we're not doing The Crow next. I mean, I'm not sure we'd ever be able to connive an excuse to ever do it on the show, but I suppose stranger things have happened. But yeah, The Crow is not next. Our next episode is Alien Resurrection.
After that, I think we're gonna do what? Is it Aliens versus Terminator?
It will be eventually, but not immediately next. I've got it here momentarily. Give me a second to find it.
I think we're reading a couple of books, right?
Our resurrection section of the timeline is going to be the movie Alien Resurrection.
Yep.
The novels Alien Sea of Sorrows and Alien's Original Sin.
Yeah, that's right. I bought Original Sin so that we could do this. Expect the novel to be broken up into a couple episodes.
Alien Resurrection, the game.
The video game on the PlayStation. Expect another live stream. YouTube.com/@CrewExpendable.
And finally, the comic book Aliens vs. Predator vs. Terminator.
Hell yeah. That's going to be good.
For the record, listeners, there have been 3 different volumes of Alien novels over the course of time. The first volume was all just novelizations of runs of the Dark Horse comic book. The second volume of them was, I believe, all original material. And the third volume is the current one that started with Out of the Shadows. all of the novels we've covered up to now have been from the third current volume, but Original Sin, I believe that is from the second volume of novels. So technically it's not considered canon anymore, but neither was Newt's Tale, and we covered that anyway, so here we are.
And also neither will be Aliens versus Predator versus Terminator.
Also true, yeah. That's definitely not canon to Alien, yeah.
We got to talk about that when we get off the air. Kenny, where can people find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd under the handle at CYHOBBEZ.
I'm on Blue Sky at Final Neil with an A. I don't think I've tweeted Blue Skied very often. And
you haven't? No.
Instagram at Final Neil Retro. I do a Mortal Kombat podcast all about Mortal Kombat. TV shows, comic books, movies, etc. It'll be winding down soon, but you can find that at mkpodquest.com. My co-host Corey and I will be launching a new show once we're done with the Mortal Kombat stuff, where we will have a reason to talk about the movie The Crow. Kenny, where can people find this show on the internet?
We can be found at a whole bunch of places. Those places are Twitter at Crew Expendapod, Blue Sky at Crew Expendable, Instagram at Crew Expendable Pod, YouTube at youtube.com/@Crew Expendable, and our website is crewexpendable.net. If you want to send us an email, you can send us an email at mother@crewexpendable.net.
Yeah, that's it. We'll be back next episode to talk about Alien Resurrection, the movie. The theatrical cut. Not that there's anything fucking different about the special edition cut. Except
also correct.
Like a different intro and outro, I think, and that's it.
I think that is it, yeah.
With our friend Bob from the Flock podcast. So until then,
stay frosty.